We are talking all about migraines on the show today and the metabolic root cause. My guest is Dr. Elena Gross. She is a neuroscientist and clinical research PhD whose personal battle with debilitating chronic migraines since adolescence fueled her mission to transform migraine treatment. By the way, chronic migraines, she says in the episode, means more than 15 days out of the month you have migraines. So yeah, that's horrible. And I hope if that is you that you're hearing this episode. My heart goes out to you. Her decade of research at Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, and Basel universities led to groundbreaking discoveries on migraine's nutritional roots, resulting in 4 patents and publications in Nature Neurology. She pioneered MigraKet. I don't know if I'm saying that right. It's the world's first medical food for migraines and created the Mastering Migraine Community to empower patients globally. She is amazing. She looks familiar. I think I maybe saw her speak at Metabolic Health Summit, which is the very, very science end of the ketogenic community. Love those guys. If you're a metabolic health nerd, you might want to check out Metabolic Health Summit sometime. It's incredible. It's in real life, but they also have online summit. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. If you want to get a discount on her brain ritual, it's called, you can hit the link in the show notes. And but yeah, I mean, this is not just that is an amazing solution that she's made, but she also gives lots of other solutions in the episode. So let's go ahead and get into the show. Here is Dr. Elena Gross. Okay, so Dr. Elena, I am really excited to talk about something that you describe as metabolic migraine. And also that there's so much more to the migraine arena than anyone's giving it credit. It's kind of like this, like, push it away. Oh, sucks for you. You have a headache. Okay, well, whatever. Like, it's kind of ignored and it's rampant. And as we discussed before, starting recording, it's in my family. My boys get migraines. It's been a huge area of interest for me. I even sometimes will get ocular migraines where it's only the visual. It looks like I stared at the sun for 2 minutes straight, kind of thing. And so, yeah, let's get into some of the root causes of migraine that people are not hearing about. And before we do, can you share what brought you to this place of discovery with migraine in your own personal life?
Yeah, and Tara, thanks so much for having me. And I'm excited we have a very common friend circle and then colleague circle. So it's good to
Yeah.
talk to you finally a bit longer. So yeah, what brought me into the field? Well, I used to get these debilitating headaches starting when I was 14. And maybe it's worth saying that it started half a year after my gynecologist had figured out that I am deficient in estrogen and progesterone. My period was very irregular. So she put me on the contraceptive pill for hormone deficiency with 14. And half a
Wow.
year later, nobody made the connection because the contraceptive pill doesn't have any side effects, or at least not any side effects that anybody's talking about. So there was no connection made for 14 years. I was taking that and was thinking I was doing myself good, and I was just making myself very sick. What we
Wow.
know now is that the contraceptive pill raises oxidative stress levels by 50%. So
Wow.
already struggling with that. And we will come to that later, the very, very close connection between oxidative stress and migraine. So there I was, nobody could tell me what's going on. I went from specialist to specialist. It was hard to even get it diagnosed. They thought it was a brain tumor or maybe stress in school or whatever. We went from specialist to specialist, finally had a diagnosis, but then we realized, oh, even though there's a billion people out there that have the same issue, nobody really understands what migraine is, why it's happening, and what you can do about it. So then I was giving antidepressants and anticonvulsant drugs and all these alternative things. We spent a lot of money going to Chinese herbal medicine specialists or acupuncture, and nothing
Mhm.
really helped. So eventually, I decided to switch from studying psychology into neuroscience to better understand what migraines are and maybe within my lifespan making some contribution to this field. Because by that time, my migraines had turned chronic. So 20 days out of 30, I was in pain. And as you have migraine, you know that that's an absolute terrible state to be in. And I could have never had a normal job anyway, right? Never.
Right.
Impossible. So then I was very lucky to have a neurologist take me under his wing, even though I was not a medical doctor. And I did both of my master's studies and thesis in the field of migraine, and eventually stumbled across something that, after a lot of trial and error, gave me my brain back. And the big aha moment came when I was procrastinating for my second master's thesis in the library. And I flicked through a Nature magazine, the only one I ever basically flicked through. So maybe it was fate. And I stumbled across the oldest treatment for epilepsy. And epilepsy and migraine are genetically related. And what they figured out 150 plus years back is that if you fast, if you put epileptic patients on a fast, the seizures reduce drastically. And you can't fast a patient forever, right? So they developed a fasting mimicking diet, which today is known in various shapes and form as a ketogenic diet, because it puts your body in a fasting state where it produces these ketone bodies, this alternative energy source for the brain and the heart, and that's known as ketosis. And reading upon the mechanisms, all the puzzle pieces fell together and everything started to make sense. Because I already thought migraine has to be this energy deficiency state, or is connected to energy deficiency. Fasting is one of the most potent triggers, right? We have sports as a trigger. A lot of trigger factors can be connected to it. And then also, I had a patient actually, and this was kind of making not sense. I was doing a chronic migraine study using neuroimaging, and one day the scanner broke down, and the patient had to come back 2 weeks later. And if you know any like really severely chronic migraine patients, you kind of tell they're in pain, they walking slum, they don't look very good. And that patient comes back and she's like walking upright and she's beaming and smiling. And I almost didn't recognize her. She looked like a different person. And I asked her, what have you done? That's like crazy. And she's like, well, I went on a 2-week fast and I had red wine every night and I didn't have a migraine for the last, whatever, 10 days. It was unheard of. And then we scanned her, and because of the thank you, we always give these people some biscuits. And she had the worst migraine again that same night. So we brought her migraine back. And I thought, how can this be possible?
Wow.
She didn't eat anything. Why is her brain not starving? But in that patient, exactly that happened. What they've tried with epileptic patients is she had been now in ketosis, and even though she wasn't eating, her brain was probably fueled properly for the first time since birth or being a baby. Because in migraine, you have this phenomenon that migraine patients are sometimes not very good at using glucose for fuel, or not good enough. They're very sensitive. They have this reactive hypoglycemia. We can talk about all these things later, but basically, just because you're eating enough calories or even excess calories, too many calories, doesn't mean your brain is adequately fueled. This was one of my biggest, it sounds so simple, but it was one of my biggest aha moments, because up to that point, I had thought as long as people eat adequate amounts of calories, they have enough energy. But you need the right amount of energy and you need the right cofactors for your brain and your cells and organs to actually be properly fueled. It's a bit like a car. If you have a diesel engine and you feed it petrol and you don't have water and oil to support the whole making energy process in the car, it's not going to go very far. But in the body, we just think we put in whatever we want,
Right.
and somehow enough energy is going to come out on the other side, and it's like black box. That's not how it works, right? So this is how I ended there. Then a lot of self-experimentation happened. I wanted to do, I had a stipend to do a PhD back in Oxford already, but I wanted to do this ketosis and migraine. There was no evidence. Oxford said it's way too risky. I can't do it here. So this is how I ended up in Basel, Switzerland, tiny, tiny place, beautiful country, where they said, okay, I can do this as a pilot project. So I had a PhD where we were the first in the world to actually do a randomized controlled trial in patients using exogenous ketone body salts in migraine. And that led to the first patent and a startup. As no big pharma wanted to look into this or take this any further, I now have a startup. We launched Brain Ritual last year. And now it's my mission to bring this to a lot of patients, to educate patients about the role of metabolism in brain health. And so I'm grateful that you're having me on today so we can look a bit at this unwanted child of neurology, migraine, but also brain metabolism and brain health in general.
I mean, as somebody who's personally affected by migraines and have just, it's that search, right? It's just like, oh, what is it? Is it this? Is it that? Is it hormones? Is it insufficient, sodium? Or blah, 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 blah. Is it serotonin? You're just like going on this like huge thing. And the fact that you've been doing this work and also published in Nature Neurology, I mean, that's huge. And that you have your own personal experience, which is like the best way to learn, right? Because you're like desperate. It's like,
And you're thinking about
really,
nothing else, right? Yes,
I
exactly. And it
really
doesn't stop after 5 p.m.,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
there.
Like, gotta
And it's a
figure
lot
this
of different
out.
things together, as
Yeah.
you said, right? And I was always like, is it this one thing or that one thing? And
Hmm.
it's all interconnected. And the beautiful thing about looking at metabolism or trying to fix metabolism, I mean the beautiful and the not so beautiful, it's been a journey of a decade now. And there's so many things that are playing into those pathways that it's not just a simple fix, but many things. And then you learn something else like, oh yeah, that also plays a role. And you can always optimize along the way. But the good news is now that I have a decade of experimenting with this, I think I can pass on some stuff so not everybody has to reinvent the wheel, but
Hmm.
can try
Hmm.
things that I've tried, and not everything will work for everyone, and everybody's different, and some things will help some and not others. But there's
Hmm.
many things that one can at least try that have a good likelihood of making things better, and they probably go along a similar way of things that you are already telling your patients and
Hmm.
clients when trying to optimize metabolism, but they are never talked about in any, or I wouldn't want to say never, but are rarely talked about in any neurologist clinic or practice.
Mm. Yeah, big work you're doing. And one clarification, because we're in this world, but some people may not be familiar. When you say exogenous ketone bodies, can you clarify the difference of what you're saying there of how they could benefit either doing a ketogenic diet or fasting, but ideally it's probably keto, doing the actual diet so it can be prolonged versus what are exogenous ketone bodies, just so people are aware there.
Absolutely. That's a good thing to dial into or to look at a bit closer. So ketone bodies we already discussed very briefly. Ketone bodies are small fatty acids, 4 Cs for any nerds out there, 4 carbons, that can be burned instead of glucose by the brain. Now, why is that even important? Because when you fast, we have these fatty acids and proteins around. This is important because the brain is protected by the blood-brain barrier all around it. And this means that only a very few selected fuel sources can actually make it into the brain. So the energy situation of the brain is a very special one. This brain, for another reason, the brain cannot store energy very well because it's surrounded by a skull. There's no space to expand. So that's why when you have a traumatic brain injury that cuts supply from the body, you get neurodegeneration in like minutes, right? So that's why that happens, because there's no storage. So the brain is, one, completely dependent on the rest of the body to supply it with energy at all times. Second, it's the most energy hungry organ of the body. 20 to 25% of energy go to the brain, even though it only makes up 2% of the mass. Can store it, and it's very, very selective. It's a picky eater, the brain, because of the blood-brain barrier. So only glucose, lactate to an extent. Lactate is around when we do exercise, but as a patient, if you're sick, you don't do much exercise. So that one is basically out. And then we have, as a third category, we have these ketone bodies that can fuel the brain. Now, if you're fasting or if you're not very good at glucose metabolism in the brain as a patient, or glucose goes low, but you don't have ketone bodies because you've been on a standard Western diet for 30 plus years of your life, or whatever much it may be, right? Then you're out of fuel, you're starving.
Hmm.
So ketone bodies are this backup fuel, and they're not even backup. They may be even a more effective fuel source to glucose to at least fuel part of the brain's energy demand. And the heart loves it too. So the heart and the brain are the organs that need ketone bodies the most. Now, there's two ways basically to get into this state of ketosis, which means having these ketone bodies around to fuel your brain. One is you go on a severely restricted carbohydrate restricted diet, and you moderate protein. That's something that people
Hmm.
don't know. Proteins are raising insulin, and proteins are converted into glucose if there's an excess of it, or
Right.
in some cases enough of it, right? I know protein requirements are going up. People are advocating for more protein, but for me, for example, I have like a huge steak. my ketone bodies will be
Right.
basically zero. So this is one thing you can do. A fasting mimicking diet, if well done, and if your liver is good enough, your liver function is good enough, your liver will make these ketone bodies for you in times of fasting or starvation or a strict ketogenic diet, right? Now there's an issue. We had outlined a couple of issues. One, for a sedentary migraine patient or whatever patient that has been abusing or using, I don't want to say abusing, but using painkillers and medication for decades, as was my case. Liver function is already sluggish. My metabolism was slow. I couldn't do exercise. I had really problems getting into high enough ketosis levels just without like completely restriction everything I was eating. And then I wasn't feeling well because I didn't have the micronutrients, because colorful fruits
Right.
and vegetables were out, because even the berries or whatever
Right.
would, even the tomatoes would kick me out of ketosis, right? So this is when I stumbled across the second possibility, exogenous ketones, meaning the ketone bodies are coming from outside of your body, endogenous inside your liver, predominantly making them, outside exogenous ketones. And that is basically you make the ketone bodies in the lab and not in your liver. And it depends on what sources. There's many different, at least in the US, nowhere else, but in the US, there are many different ways or products that you can do this. And I just want to say the main two types are either you have the beta hydroxybutyrate, the prime ketone body, either in its natural human identical form or in its racemic, which is half of a version, a mirror image that is not part of the body, and half of the body's version, so a different orientation in space, bound to a mineral salt or on its own. And that's what we decided, the human identical form is what we decided to put in our product.
Mm.
It's basically what the liver would be making, but in a lab, and you are getting
Mm.
instant ketosis in 15, 20 minutes. But everything that is inside of the product that I made is basically human identical and spares the liver, right? The other
Mm.
option that is out there that I wouldn't recommend for patients is these so-called ketone esters, at least those where the ketone body is bound, chemically bound to an alcohol. This alcohol is called butanediol, and it will be converted into beta hydroxybutyrate, the ketone body, eventually, but it costs a lot of NAD+. You might have heard that. It's that cofactor that keeps you young. And it will be like an alcohol will be stressful for your liver over time. So if you chronically ingest that, for somebody who's already struggling with their liver, may not be the best solution in a patient. In an athlete, different story, but in a patient, maybe not the best idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
So
have a whole
this is
podcast episode about how some of the ketone esters out there. And I do
you
mention a
amazing.
very specific brand that has a very huge marketing company that is not actually pure ketone ester, that with the butane diol like that. Yeah, I have a whole, if you guys check out my podcast with Frank Yosa, if anybody wants to check that out, because I'm pretty upset actually about how some of that's being marketed with,
But
because
even the ketone ester itself is 50% butanediol.
okay, okay. So for
So it's not
migraines,
just,
no
there
go.
are some that put in the butanediol pure, yes,
Mm-hmm.
but even the ketone ester, and that's because it's a new,
Okay.
people don't realize it's 50% BHB, 50% butanediol, and that will be spliced into these components.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yes, butanediol straight, there are companies that sell it straight like that. There's some that mix it, but the ketone ester itself
Okay.
containing butanediol. And I know
Okay.
from doctors that if you take that longer term, even as a healthy patient, your liver enzymes will suffer.
Mm.
So just as a warning, right? In the end, you're your own boss. You can
Yeah.
decide what to put in your
Yeah.
body. You can experiment. Just if you do take them longer term, just see what happens to your liver. It's easy to test before and after. Any GP can do it. So
Nice.
even these, there's a lot of labs in the US now. You don't even need the GP anymore, which is
Yeah.
quite interesting.
Yeah.
Quite liberating, to be honest. We're a little far from that over here, but yeah,
Okay, I'm
that's on
curious.
the exogenous ketone side. Yeah.
So I'm curious, and I do also want to, you mentioned cofactors, and I want to get into that a little bit, but so when the brain isn't getting proper energy, and I'll just tee this up of framework for anybody who's very not familiar with,
Yeah, sure.
metabolic dysfunction or whatever. The way
Absolutely.
I see it is like if you're brain is not good, or your cells and your whole body, kind of the same thing, is not, it's almost like I see it as like a barrier, a wall. It's just not able to uptake glucose and use it for energy well. But it's like, ooh, I'm not used to, not, I don't have a barrier to ketone. So now all of a sudden you have this energy, this metabolic energy. And I'm curious, like, I don't know if you can answer this without, going pure scientist mode for a podcast, but like, what about that? Like, so it doesn't have energy, but what about that causes migraine? Is it like a circuitry? How in the neurology does the absence
Yeah.
of energy cause a migraine?
So we can even say that in very complicated, but also in very simple terms. So
Okay.
there's two things primarily that we can very directly, even via all the mechanistics, ion channels, and substances that are released that cause the migraine pain and associated symptoms. And that's either this energy deficiency or elevated oxidative stress. Oxidative stress are these free radical
Mm,
bombs. You can think of them as bombs, literally very reactive molecules that destroy anything they touch. And this will directly, again, impair energy metabolism. It will impair the mitochondria, the powerhouses of the cells, will impair them to make energy. And all migraine trigger factors, I think, well, most of them, I haven't figured one where you cannot connect the trigger to an increase in oxidative stress, either directly or via too low energy. And in very simple terms, the brain has too low energy. It will force you to rest. How does it do that if you're not listening to the general, like, I'm fatigued, I should slow down, but I have to work, so I'll push through it anyway? Then it will turn on via the release of pro-inflammatory peptides and so on. It will turn on energy conserving behavior. Now, movement makes migraine worse, right? You get sick. Light, noise, smell, anything that makes you spend more energy, like sensory stimulation, makes it worse. Everybody that I know without modern pain-killing solutions will lie down in a dark room and not move.
hmm
Isn't that the best energy conserving behavior
Yeah.
that you can take? So in very, without going into any of the science, and we can go through the mechanisms as well if you're interested. This happens so if you have low energy, which is a threat to the organism, neurons need to fire. Neurons need to keep up the resting membrane. That's the dam between the ocean and the land, right? So there needs to be an electrical charge difference between the inside and the outside of the cell. Otherwise, you cannot fire an action potential, which means you cannot think, you cannot move, you cannot function, right? If there's
hmm
no difference in charge, you're dead. That's it. So
Right.
we need to keep that up. That takes up 50% of the brain energy. Now, this also means the higher the dam, the lower the chance that a neuron will fire. Now, if we have less energy, the dam will break down. And this means the same as if you're trying to protect yourself from waves of the ocean. The lower the dam, the more likely the waves are crushing over it. The more waves are crushing over it, the more firing you have in the brain, which means you're more sensitive to stimuli. We see that in ADHD, we see that in autism, we see that in migraine, we see that in epilepsy. You're more sensitive to light, sounds, it's all uncomfortable. You can't filter as much anymore, right? And if it goes very bad, then you have like a seizure. So a seizure is also a lot of these waves in synchrony, like rushing over the brain. And you told me earlier that you have auras,
hmm
visual auras. So the aura, you can see the wave.
Yeah.
So with the aura, you can see the wave traveling. So an aura phase, in those that have that, in 30% of migraine patients, they have, or a third, they have this aura phase, this 30 to 60 minutes of sensory
hmm
disabilities. It can be all the way to a paralysis of the body, but usually it's visual. And
hmm
that means here also the resting membrane potential has come down, possibly because we're energy deficient. And now there's waves crushing, there's electrical firing in synchrony. And because it happens so quickly, afterwards there's destruction. So like a tsunami going over a country, and while there is destruction, you cannot fire neurons anymore, which means you cannot see. So
mm
you can see the wave traveling in the sense that you can see the destruction. There's nothing happening in the visual field. Luckily, it's transiently. So then the body will clean up. It will restore the dam, like it will tidy up all the debris, and then your vision is restored. But that tidying up again is super, super energy expensive.
mm.
So when you have the aura now and you rest and you manage to get energy in your brain and reduce the oxidative stress, you do not get the pain phase. But if you are not optimized, right, you don't have enough ion channel, not enough energy, then this will also then trigger the pain. So
Wow,
these
thanks for
are
explaining
basically
that.
two things. But yeah, so what happens if you have too little energy? And the other thing that happens, which is protective, so the brain starts sending out these pro-pain, pro-inflammatory substances on the one hand to force you to rest. On the other hand, we know that it turns on these energy liberators. So lipogenesis goes up. We liberate fatty acids for energy. We start making ketone bodies. We increase cortisol and adrenaline so that glucose is elevated. The brain turns the rest of the body insulin resistant so that there's more glucose ready for the brain. So
Wow.
the migraine mechanisms are there. And that's why I always say the migraine is your friend. It's doing everything to protect you. All these mechanisms they are going on while you feel terrible are trying to rescue the situation. So the migraine is the fire alarm, not the fire. But modern medicine, and I know we have to sometimes just turn off the fire alarm because it's annoying and it stops us from what we're doing. But we really need to focus on extinguishing the fire. And I think that's what you're working on with your patients. And that's what my work is focusing on, is trying to find the causes of the fire
Right.
and extinguishing the fire and not the alarm.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I haven't had one of those or ocular migraines, I guess they're called, in a few. Is that the official term? Is that
Yes,
correct?
I think you call it like this in the
Okay.
US. The underlying
Oh, okay.
mechanism is the aura.
Okay.
Migraine, you
Aura
can also
sounds
say
cooler.
migraine with aura. You can say ocular migraine or migraine with aura, and the aura is that visual phenomenon,
Okay.
or it could be that physical phenomenon. Some people have work finding difficulties, some people get paralysis, some people get very cold. I used to get shivers like during fever, and that depends on where the wave is traveling in your
Hmm.
brain. So your brain is to a degree compartmentalized. So there's a part that's responsible for hearing, there's a part that's responsible for speaking, there's a part that's responsible for moving, there's a part that's responsible for vision, right? And depending on where your wave travels, that's what not working well at the time.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I definitely when I mean I've probably only had like a handful of these in my life, right? And it's been a few years, but I am curious also, and maybe other people are too. It was always definitely triggered by light. Like, when you're driving and maybe the sun's rising,
Mhm.
it's just like that weird, it's off to your right side. So over here, everything's like not bright. And then you get this, it's like flashing light. And of course, I'm like fasted, probably just had a bunch of caffeine, worked out, blood sugar is probably at ultimate low. And then why does light,
Yeah.
do you know, like what is that
Yeah.
the light trigger?
So light, especially bright light, like blue or white light, is the most energy demanding stimulus that can go into your eyes. Your
Okay.
eyes are, the human brain is about 50% vision. Your eyes are one
What?
of the organs that have the most mitochondria and the most energy needs of everything. Humans are visual creatures.
I didn't know that
You
about
say you have
the eye.
caffeine. Caffeine is the gas pedal.
Yeah.
Caffeine is not the fuel, but many people think caffeine energy. No.
No. Yeah.
Caffeine speed. There's 0 calories, there's zero
Right.
energy in that, right? So
Right.
caffeine on an empty stomach for a migraine patient, probably not a good idea. Then you do exercise, you have elevated oxidative stress. So your
Right.
body is in that high cortisol, caffeine raises cortisol
Totally.
state without fuel, right? And
Right.
now there's this intense sensory stimulation that comes in
Mm.
that you probably want to filter out as well because you need to drive.
Hmm.
It's energy deficiency. It's too much oxidative
Yeah.
stress, raised oxidative stress, and it's energy deficit. Also, there was this quite interesting phenomena where they had this cartoons kind of things in Asia. I don't know whether it was China or elsewhere, where they had this explosion on TV with this like flickering lights and whatever. And a lot of kids that were watching it at the same time had a seizure that didn't even necessarily have epilepsy
Oh
from
my gosh.
like this intense stroboscopic light coming out of the TV. When I had the connection of like, oh, like all of these kids coming to a hospital at the same time, what's going on? And it was
Yeah.
that TV cartoon. So it's a well-established phenomena that these you can have that in a disco as well, or like the light flickering over the horizon. horizon that can trigger migraine or seizure in susceptible patients. So
Wow. Okay. Thanks for
the
that.
other thing you need to be aware of, and that's something that very few people know, I didn't know for a long time, is that, blue light is the most energy dense light. It also causes the most oxidative stress. So in
Mm,
the evenings, I will recommend to all patients at least wear blue blocker glasses, right?
hmm
I wear these from like later afternoon because they, as you can see, they protect you from a bit of blue light. And then
hmm
in the evenings, like after sunset, I really try to wear the very orange ones
Yeah,
to
me
really
too.
filter out the blue light and give your eyes a rest. It's really in like the supermarket, hospital kind of white blue lights. My eyes really even start to hurt. It's the worst,
As
right?
soon as especially I try to avoid even leaving my house once it's like getting dark. But if I walk into like a Target, or you don't have those, like
Yeah, yeah,
a
exactly. Yeah,
supermarket, a
the
big,
supermarket. Yeah, yeah,
big
yeah, yeah, exactly.
superstore, I literally feel like I'm gonna get a ocular migraine as soon as I walk
Exactly.
out. I'm like,
So
oh my
bring the
gosh.
very orange glasses, the only way I can step into the
Yeah.
store. And this is what I wanted to say. What few people know is that the blue light raises oxidative stress even through your skin.
hmm
So
mm
that's why at night,
hmm
try to wear
Right.
maybe a long, if you go to that place,
Right.
maybe even try to leave to wear some long sleeves if you're very sensitive.
Yeah, good reminder on that. Exactly, the
Yeah.
photoreceptors in the skin. Okay, nice. I
Yeah.
want to
So,
ask.
and then you have more melatonin, and maybe that's worth mentioning as well. Melatonin is one of the strongest and best antioxidants you can ever imagine. It gets into the mitochondria. And it's known as the sleep hormone, but it is important for detoxification, which is essential in today's world. It's important for metabolism. It's important to rescue your mitochondria from these free radical bombs that we're always exposed to. So the only reason this doesn't have melatonin in it is because we also want people to take it primarily during the day.
Uh-huh.
And it's a very individual need, but high dose melatonin really has been shown, even low dose in clinical trials, to be beneficial for migraine. So something to really dig into.
Mm-hmm.
And you told me your son and your kids have migraine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is look into melatonin and see if that could give you that extra level of protection during the night.
Mm-hmm.
Or even some people low dose even take it during the day if you have really like bad mitochondrial dysfunction, for example. It's a beautiful substance to look into, and it is blocked by almost everything we do these days because we are always in front of a TV or in front of a phone. So
Mm-hmm.
another thing I can recommend to listeners is
Yeah.
install that red mode, right? So this is like really red. I have it on the perfect. There we go.
My 12-year-old taught me that. 3 clicks. I can't remember how he set it up, but
I
there
don't
you
know
go.
how it was set up with a friend did it, but it's definitely useful because we always look at these things during the day and the night, unfortunately. So
For
there's one.
audio listeners, real quick, what just happened? Because most people are going to listen to this on audio.
Yeah, true,
There's some
true,
sort
yeah.
of setting you can put on your phone. I have an iPhone, and my 12-year-old literally set this up, but you can look it up. I just do 3 clicks on like the right, power button, and it just my screen looks exactly how it does when I have my blue blocking glasses on.
Yeah,
So it's like a
yeah,
setting. It's
very
like a little
intensely red,
trick
and
you
I
can
had
set
the
up.
same thing. So that's what we were just showing.
Uh,
Yeah, so two biohackers in a call.
Yeah, I'm a huge high dose melatonin fan. I found out about it years ago. My mom had Alzheimer's. I have the predispositions genetically for early onset Alzheimer's. I am everything that increases BDNF and brain energy and all of that.
Yeah.
So I'm a high dose melatonin
And the
fan.
brain ritual is also for you, especially if
Okay,
you have that in your
nice.
family, right? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we can segue on that a little bit because I did want to hit on these cofactors because I know you have other thing. It's not just ketones
Yeah,
and brain ritual, So beside, and maybe we can segue into Alzheimer's and because that's a
sure.
really important brain energy thing too. And
Yeah,
gosh, even mental illness, I'm thinking, I'm sure you're
yeah,
probably connected with Chris Palmer and the work he's doing
yeah,
with
yeah. He's a
schizophrenia and brain energy is just like amazing. My mom had schizophrenia, so it's just like really dear to my heart. She had, type 2 diabetes, schizophrenia, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's. She passed away about it.
Oh, so sorry to hear, but that shows, that tells me that it is a mitochondrial component
Mm-hmm.
most likely, because your mom passed it on to you, you
Mm-hmm.
passed it on to your boys. So
Mm-hmm.
that's one thing. Whenever you have a strong mitochondrial connection
Yeah.
to disease, it's typically passed on by the mother's line because mitochondria are almost
Mm,
fully passed on through
right.
the mother. So that
Mm,
means migraine is more prominent in women, but it can be also in boys, but it's almost always mostly passed on through the mother.
True. Yeah, thanks for
So,
mentioning
so
that.
that's what, and your mother has all of these issues now. You have,
Right.
that all makes sense because it's different expressions, I think, of a common metabolic issue,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
includes mitochondria, right? And they're all somehow related. It's very different mechanisms, but all of them are connected to mitochondrial health for sure, which is
Yeah.
hopeful, right? So we're not necessarily a slave to our genetics. Of course, some things make it more likely that we get something because that is in our genes. So the genes are like the blueprint, but or like a coloring book, right? So the lines are there, but what is colored in which way is kind of the epigenetics, which means the environment we put our genes into.
Right.
And that is tremendously important. And the more we know, the more we can switch our environment around so our genes aren't negatively expressed. In the sense of migraine, just quickly closing that topic, and then we can move on to the other things. In the case of migraine, I can explain it very nicely. You have this increased energy demand because a migraine's brain doesn't habituate, it doesn't shut off. It's constantly firing, even if the stimulus doesn't change. So it's a brain that has a higher energy need, and neuroimaging studies show that a migrainous brain on average has 16% less energy to a healthy person's brain, even between attacks. So it's in an energy shortage, has a higher demand, and it comes with metabolic abnormalities, we say, well, that give you less energy. So a higher energy need met with a lower demand is disaster. We cannot really influence the higher demand, but we can influence the energy availability, right? And I think similar to Alzheimer's, we have this phenomenon of type 3 diabetes in the brain becoming insulin resistance independent of the body. We can work on that. We can work on oxidative stress, inflammation is increased in Alzheimer's, psychosis, many different states. We can work on the inflammatory piece, also part of migraine. There's a lot of things that we have a control over in our environment, at least partially, that we can do so the genes may never have to negatively express.
Yes. Yeah, I honestly, I mean, I'm like, I could be kidding myself, but I don't feel worried at all about getting Alzheimer's because I intermittent fast. I do high intensity interval training. I prioritize rest and stress management and slow and circadian rhythm and sleep, and I eat well and my relationships are good. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know. I really feel my blood sugar man, I wear a continuous glucose monitor every once in a while and, track my heart rate variability. I just feel like there's so much
You must be
power in our
somehow.
hands.
Yeah.
I'm definitely a huge
And your mom
epigenetics.
probably lived differently, right?
Oh yeah, like no massive trauma, no help. We were poor because she was schizophrenic, single mom. Like, life was hard, right? So of course it's lots of fast food and packaged foods. And she was born in 1950, so I just see people who lived in that era of like the boom of like I call it bunker food, right? Especially in America, it's like we were just living off bunker, canned, processed everything and like no knowledge. And
Yeah.
so you combine all that. There
That
weren't
was when the time was
gyms.
still all cool and we didn't know, right? So these are the guinea pigs. Just
Right,
how
right,
come you have all the drugs and the drugs are cool too? Like,
right,
oh my God, you have to take a drug. There's like drug things now. I want to take a pill. Don't do any hard thing. There's a pill. You don't have to change
right,
anything in your
right,
life. That's that generation, which is very sad, right?
right.
We know more now, but not everybody does. And that's why I
Yeah,
guess you're doing what you're doing and I'm
yeah,
doing what I'm doing. And maybe it's helpful. I developed this 4-pillar model for mastering migraine metabolically, which basically equals to mastering metabolism.
yeah,
And I think that could be good to hear if you are suffering from anything like anxiety, depression, as you said, potentially you have Alzheimer in your family or somebody. Later stage Alzheimer, it is more difficult. This is why we're testing also the brain ritual in both depression and now Alzheimer's. So we just signed an agreement with a clinic and we are going to start an Alzheimer trial ideally by the end of the year.
awesome.
But those where lifestyle changes are hard to impossible. But ideally, if you still can, the first pillar of metabolic health is stabilizing blood glucose. And this is ideally, and you probably can't see it, I'm also wearing one
Yeah,
of you guys right
a
now.
continuous glucose monitor she got on.
Exactly. To experiment with different food groups. And it's very interesting. For example, I eat a sweet potato with fat and protein and some veggies, and my glucose almost doesn't move at all. Like
Right.
very slow. super stable. I eat a melon and my blood sugar like skyrockets, or like even oats, my blood I don't personally tolerate very well.
Hmm.
So that some carbs are not created equal for everyone. So I think it's very valid.
Totally.
Even like beans, like I
Right.
used to be ketogenic. I'm not anymore. I know that I personally, because my mitochondria are struggling, feel better with some carbs because prolonged
Yeah.
fasting, ketogenic diet is also stressful. It's a stressor, but if you're fit and healthy, the stress will make you stronger. If you're not very fit, because of, I don't know, but for me, it's also toxin related, then more stress can make it worse. So that's why I'm now on a low GI diet, limited
Mm-hmm.
fasting in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
like prolonged fasting, until my mitochondria have a bit of rest and restore.
Mm-hmm. Me
And I
too.
go for low glycemic index carbs, makes me sleep better, longer for sure. And
Hmm.
so everybody has to experiment, but there's
Yeah.
no compromise for stable blood glucose, because and I did a couple of posts and we can go through that again. It goes up very quickly and it goes down very slowly. And that's this hypoglycemia phase that's the most dangerous for migraines. When your blood sugar goes lower than it was before, you have to raise cortisol, adrenaline, that increases oxidative stress to get the blood sugar where it should
Right.
be, and that
Right.
triggers the migraine. So
Mhm.
stable blood glucose can be already life-saving for quite a few people. That also includes things that are not diet related, which is stress management. Stress management can have your blood sugar go up. It
Way
increases your
more than food. Anyone who's worn a continuous glucose monitor has had their mind blown about a moment that they were stressed out or angry or scared. They're like, it went higher than it ever has from food. Okay, cool. I understand how
yeah,
that works now in my body.
yeah. And sleep deprivation.
Yeah,
Also see that raises cortisol and adrenaline. And if it does that, your body will increase glucose to help you fight and flight.
right.
So that's the thing. That's pillar one. Then we have pillar two. Pillar two is keeping oxidative stress at bay and increasing antioxidant performance. And that's the most important thing, even for aging. Oxidative
Mhm.
stress is the number one thing that makes you age. It's the number one thing that makes you sick. So oxidative stress, these free radicals, we want to keep them at bay. How do you do that? Watch out for toxins in food, in the air, in water, if you're in the US, for sure. And watch out for perfumes. Perfumes are the next smoking. Perfumes are so toxic. 50% of perfumes are literally toxic. And because they are in the air, they basically will pass through the blood-brain barrier directly into your brain, because in your nose, the blood-brain barrier is actually broken. The only
Mm,
place, because otherwise you wouldn't smell. The smell
mm,
needs to get into the brain so we can
right.
register it, right? So
Wow.
your nose, you're the most vulnerable to toxins, or one of the most, because it will go directly into your
Mm,
brain. So migraine patients are very sensitive to perfume for a reason. It's warning you. So use essential oils, or at least like organic versions where you know there's no toxins, because perfumes aren't regulated either, because you're not eating them.
right.
Oh, and these watch out for any other household cleaning device stuff that are smelling, right? Or your detergent. All
Even
these,
some of the kind of healthy ones. Watch out for the kind of healthy. There's a lot of marketing crap happening
I'm
with
sure.
like,
I'm
it's
sure.
like,
Yeah.
shampoo says like sulfate free and like that's it. But it's like got all these other things, toxic,
Yes.
you know what I mean? So like, be, I like to,
Exactly. Exactly. And you're right. And there's so much, in some, it's really these marketing, and even my parents are falling for this, right? Because you have to
uh-huh.
look closely. They say like, or with organic lavender. And then it's
Right.
organic, but it's like only organic lavender or whatever, right? Or organic citrus.
Exactly.
And all the rest is crap. So it really needs to have like an organic label, that is like third-party control, but really an organic label for the whole thing, and not just like one ingredient that's organic. It's like, it's
Yeah.
wild word. It's really, really sad, but
I
yeah.
like to go on the environmental working group just for listeners, ewg.org,
Yeah, it's
environmental working
important.
group, and they have ratings on all different types of products. And so like maybe, if you're going to order here on Amazon, like you want a clean laundry detergent, just go to ewg.org. They have the whole database, and like it's like I like a brand here called Attitude. But they give them ratings, right? So it's like you kind of get more educated. Okay, just a heads up.
Amazing. That's such a good resource. Maybe you put it in the footnotes. I really want to.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't work if you're overseas, but for the US, it's an excellent resource. And then for food, watch out for the Dirty Dozen, at least the ones that are the most pesticide
Right.
foods. And there's the clean 15 that can be eaten also non-organic. And I know that people will say like it's very expensive. I know it is more expensive, but then what's possible over here is, and maybe over there as well, I think, is trying to go directly to the farmer or the resource where your food is coming from. You skip the middleman, which is like the
Right.
supermarkets or whatever. So trying to find local farmers markets. If you go towards the end, sometimes you get a discount before the stuff goes bad. Or like right now here, I found a farmer nearby. He's basically
Right.
raising everything organic, and I buy like a quarter of a cow or like a
Yep.
she would have directly from them, and then I
Right.
take the intestines to get them for free, you know, and use the fat, whatever. Nobody wants a heart or the liver anymore, so that can be an advantage. And yeah, local foods have more nutrients, but really, and if you want to support your antioxidant system, you can do that with exogenous antioxidants like CoQ10, which you have in the product, or melatonin. We've talked about this, but endogenous antioxidant production usually depends on thiol groups. Thiol groups are these things that will catch free radicals or toxins like heavy metals and try to excrete them from your body. And this will be in sulfurous food groups. So this is your onions, your garlic. This is also why these can be so healthy. Look, your cauliflower, your broccoli, Brussels sprouts, these will have thiol groups in them that can help the detox and the fighting of free radicals.
Right.
That's that group. Now, then the third group is micronutrients. Now, a whole foods diet will help for sure. But ideally, you will also look at actually whether you are deficient on certain micronutrients, and this includes electrolytes. If you're filtering your water is dead. You cannot hydrate your body with a water that doesn't contain electrolytes. Actually, you can even kill yourself. So I think there was a couple of cases in the US, a mom who drank 9 liters of filtered water and she died because you're excreting too many electrolytes. Electrolytes you need for your cells to fire, right? To keep up that membrane potential. That's done, all of that is done with electrolytes. So I try to drink mineralized water. I mean, where I am, I'm lucky in Switzerland, right? I just drink the water from the tap. It's mineral water.
The image that just went in my
Right?
head is probably very cliche, but it was wonderful.
Yeah, but again, and once you leave the houses behind, it looks a little bit like that. So it's a little easier, but there are mineralized waters in the US, and if not, then at least use reverse osmosis where you put the stuff back in. And
Yeah.
the trace minerals that people always forget, right? The boron, the selenium, the zinc, the molybdenum, this stuff, we also put it in here in the
Nice.
brain ritual, just because it's also essential as cofactors to keep your energy system running and to detox and so on. And it's not really in our waters and our soils. What isn't in the soil is not in your food, right? So that's why
Right.
eating a whole foods diet is very nice and important, but either looking, or if not looking, at least making sure that you get adequate amounts, ideally methylated B vitamins, but also L-carnitine, you know, then your taurine, some amino acids your gut needs, or your liver needs, and then vitamin A mixed to tocopherols are in there as well, D,
Nice.
C, everything that you may need to make energy, right? So that's why we put
Yeah.
it into the brain ritual as well, because to burn ketone bodies inside of the mitochondria, you also need these cofactors, because
Right.
cofactors are kind of like catalysts. They are needed for enzymes to do a certain reaction. And without them, you're just not doing the reaction, which means you're not
Right.
performing that process in the body. And the fourth pillar of metabolic health or migraine mastering is providing the brain with an alternative energy source if it's struggling with glucose. Now, so far, we've basically optimized general metabolism. And if you're good with glucose or good enough, once it's stable, that's fine. For some people, they need the fourth pillar, that they at least partially need an alternative source for energy. And that's where the ketone bodies come in. And this can be done via a diet. For some people, like a low carb diet is enough and they make enough ketone bodies. They just need to replace a little. For some, they need to go stricter ketosis, or sometimes it can help enough if they just take an exogenous source of ketone bodies on top of and I always have to say this, nothing replaces a healthy diet.
Right.
No product, powder, life, whatever will undo an unhealthy lifestyle. That's just the truth. And I think for better compliance, we have to stop feeling restricted, because for years I was like, I can't have this, I can't have that. I really want that, but at some point I just said, well, you can have the cookies, you can have all the cookies you
Right.
want, but do you really
Right.
want them? Because it makes you
Right.
feel so shit and you're destroying your
Exactly.
body. And really, what really helped me is just having alternative snacks, whatever I want that are healthy but tasty. This
Yeah.
is where, I mean, nowadays, there's so many amazing recipes out there where you can really make it fun and where you can make it your lifestyle, where you are supporting your body, you're supporting your brain. Your brain and body is trying to support you. Now you have to give them something back, but in
Right.
a tasty and in a fun way. And
Exactly.
perfection is the enemy of doing anything, right? So
Totally.
rather have imperfect action than perfect inaction. So
Yeah.
if you do have on holiday or you can control it and you
Yeah.
do have to eat something that you otherwise wouldn't, try to enjoy it and just
Exactly.
get straight back on, right?
Right.
That's
Right. No big deal. But yeah, I love that pearl of wisdom at the end there of just like we want our food to taste good, yes, and we also remember what food is,
yeah.
right? So the
Once you put the
bulk of
fat
it
back
should
in,
be nutrition for it to make this thing work.
yes, it's not just calories. That's the thing. That's where it all went
Right.
wrong. This whole lie that it's just about calories, that couldn't be further from the truth. And the good
Right.
news is, once you add back the fat, you don't need the flavor enhancers. You
Right.
don't need the glutamate. You don't need the sugar because it's fat-free. Fat is a flavor enhancer in its
Yeah.
own. Fat is not the enemy if it's healthy fat, if it's not processed fat and like fried vegetable oil, right? Then the fat is good for you. We need fat for our membranes, right? We need fat for so many things in the body. So add the fat back in and it will
Yeah.
taste good,
And
even
and
without
some high
extra
quality
sugar.
salt. And some high quality
Yes,
salt with it, right?
yes.
And now
I
vegetables
put
taste
salt in my
good.
coffee and people go like, what? Some people
Yeah.
put sugar
It's
in
the
their coffee. I
best.
put salt in my coffee. It's amazing.
Oh, so for me, some heavy whipping cream and coffee, a little pinch of salt on top, it's like decadent.
Yeah. So, and with salt though, again, be careful because standard table salt has these anti-caking agents and you're again
Right.
poisoning yourself. So, and then again, if you use ocean salt, like how do you call that? Is it ocean salt? No, I don't know.
Sea salt.
Sea salt, sea salt. That's full of microplastics. So the safest way is to go with a stone salt, like Himalayan salt or like any
Hmm.
stone salt, but without additives. And then really like
Yeah.
you can have that in your water, especially with migraine, they tend to be low sodium. So with sodium, again, your body will tell you how much you need. If it's too salty, it's too salty. If
Exactly.
you're
Exactly.
craving salt, don't
Right.
try to have the salt, especially if you're a migraine patient.
Nice.
It's
Thanks.
a good
Yeah,
rule.
we're big fans of real salt. They're based here in
Yeah,
Utah
that's
where
a
I
stone
live,
salt.
and it's
Exactly.
underground. I've been to the mine. It's just an underground seabed from way millions of years ago, and
Expensive,
it's
but very nice. Exactly. So there was no microplastic in the sea
right.
salt
So very
back
nice.
then.
Yeah.
So you're clean.
Wow. Elena, this has been so informative. Thank you for I'm like we definitely need more mics on you. I love being able to have guests like you that have been doing such humongous work in an area that is like really unsupported, and there's so many people that they just need good information. Like they've never heard of anything you're talking about maybe, you know?
Okay, we
And
need to empower patients to take back the
yeah.
in their own hand. And I feel like our
Hmm.
current medical system isn't really doing that. It wasn't it doing it for me, that's for sure. And so that's the mission. Once you have the information, then you can make an informed decision and an informed choice. But we
Right.
can't really blame our population, our fellow humans, to making bad dietary choices if
Right.
they don't even have the information
Right.
to decide otherwise, right?
Yep. Yep.
And sometimes we're trying to do well and we don't know about who would have thought that perfume, right, that is supposed to be something that you do for your wellness and whatever is
Yeah.
toxins.
Right. Right. Yeah,
It's just we don't have the and a lot of our information comes from ads, comes from the people trying to sell you stuff. And I have to say, I mean,
yeah.
I'm trying to I introduce my product also. I'm taking myself, of course, but please do your own research.
Yeah.
Google the material, ask ChatGPT about the ingredients, get some information from another source and see if it's really good for you. I would generally try and do that on everything. And I know we still have to live
Yeah.
but then you have trusted resources like Tara that you can check in with. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think in the current day and age, you have to take your health into your own hands
Yeah.
because you cannot rely on your medical doctors or otherwise to do so.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Thank you so much. And yeah, I can't wait to try your brain ritual and have my boys try it. So it's
Yeah, let me
Coach
know
Tara
how they
approved.
get on. Yes, and next time you could, if we ever do it next time, you have to tell me how what triggers the
Okay.
brain and how they are coping with it, because especially as children, there's so little or teenagers, there's so little you can take, right? You don't want to give them anticonvulsants if you don't have to, right?
Right.
But
Exactly.
migraine in children is the most cruel thing, I think.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
bless them.
Well, thank you so much. And guys, if you want to check out Ritual, we'll put the link in the show notes and have a discount link for you there. And let's see what else. Where do they find you? What's your website,
Yeah, so
socials?
Brain Ritual, if you want to learn more about brain health, migraine, Brain Ritual is
Mhm.
a resource, brainritual.com.
Okay.
Then there's Dr. Elena Gross, myname.com, where you can also download the white paper, which basically talks about the four pillars.
Mm.
It's a migraine guide that's
Hmm.
absolutely free. I put together 10 videos actually, on how to master migraine, which explains inflammation, oxidative stress, metabolism, all of the stuff we discussed today in a bit more detail. So if you want to check that out, completely free, you'll learn more about how to master metabolism and what that actually really even is. So please feel free to use that and spread that. The more people know about this, the better. So those are some where you can find me. Dr. Elena Gross on all social media channels, and Brain Ritual on all social media channels as well. And if
Awesome.
you do try it, whatever, please let us know. We're always happy to hear from you.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tara. Bye-bye. Have a great day, everyone.
You too. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Inside Out Health Podcast. I hope it's been helpful to you in your journey. If you think that it might be helpful to someone you know, please share it with them. Please share on social media. It really helps me grow the show and reach more people with these amazing messages. And if you could be so kind as to rate the show and possibly even leave me a review, that really helps. So much thanks in advance if you do that. And yeah, please subscribe if you want to hear more of this type of content. I have lots of amazing expert guests on the way. All right. Thank you.